Hey, it's good to have all of you join us here this morning, and welcome to all of you, whether you are close to us or far away. It doesn't matter. We love that you are joining us this morning, and hope that this is going to be a really good service for you to to study with us and worship with us today. I want to give you a special invitation to join us this evening at 6 o'clock online, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube, for the virtual prayer service for the start of school. It's some stuff that we've put together that where we're going to pray for kids, and we're going to pray for teachers and school workers and administrators and people that are just involved with the start of school. And I feel like that is something worth our time. So it's at 6 o'clock tonight. It'll probably go about a half an hour, and we'd sure love to have you join us. Now, as far as this morning, I say this every week. Make sure that you go to your refrigerator, get your communion juice and bread. Bring it, have it there close to you, because just a little later on in this service, we're going to share communion together as we do every week. So we're going to start this morning with a prayer time, and so we'd like you to kind of turn your attention to that right now. I'm going to do a recap from kind of the last couple of weeks and see if it makes sense. I've been actually been doing a lot of thinking about this, that this whole thing we're talking about out of the first chapter of James is actually, it's actually kind of complicated, and it's funny because this whole series started by thinking about how to simplify these things that are really very complicated. And the more that I've gotten into it, the more I wonder if I have complicated things rather than simplifying them. I was thinking actually today about how we want our kids, our own children, to grow up in the faith. And we want to pass on the things that will help them live out their lives, and really by the time they grow older, that they are holding on to the central truths of our faith. And that is not as easy as it sounds, because especially if we are people who we raise our kids to believe certain things, and they trust us. We want them to trust us, and part of the deal is that we kind of live out our lives, and we take our children to church. I mean, I was trying to think of an easier way to say it, but we actually take our kids to church, and we want them to actually live out their lives as people of faith. And we all have sources where we go to for truth. People that we trust, people that when they say those things, we believe them. At least we hope that what they're saying is true. And sometimes it can be about politics, and sometimes it can be about parenting, and sometimes it can be about plumbing. But if they are our go-to, then we trust what they have to say. I think it is equally true for theology, that there are certain places that we can go where we know that we trust that that person or that book or that school of thought or whatever is worthy of our trust, and we kind of hold on to how they teach it, how they have expressed to us what it is that we're supposed to believe. And I hope this is making sense to you. After all of these years, this is kind of how I've learned to think and speak about the nature of pain and suffering. And that's where we're at in this first chapter of James, is speaking about trials and about the testing of our faith and perseverance. And I got to tell you, there's a lot here. There's a lot to it. To making, going into what we believe, and not just about the testing and the pain and the suffering and so forth, but where faith falls into it. And I know for you and for me, these are like incredibly important questions for us to deal with. The nature of pain and suffering, and where it comes from, and how we are actually supposed to deal with it. And I guess to the degree that you trust me the way that I have trusted my sources growing up, you trust maybe some of my words and some of my faith journey, maybe this will help you. I hope it, I really, really, really hope that it does. James writes, "Consider it all joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." I want to reaffirm just a couple of things as we begin today. And that is that I believe with my whole heart, every part of who I am, that God is the creator, God is good, God is loving, God is merciful, and that every one of those things where we see that challenges that part of his nature, that part of his character, when we read in the Bible or we think that we see something in the course of human events that makes God look anything other than good and loving and merciful. I have come to a point in my life where I simply believe that God's goodness and his love trumps any other thing that I see, because honestly it's because when I look at the face of Jesus, that is all that I see, is that he is loving and good and merciful. Satan, on the other hand, Satan is a deceiver, he is a liar, he is the Lord of chaos, he is evil, and because of him, life is full of trials, life is full of struggle, life is full of tragedy and pain and bad and evil. We read in Ephesians, we looked at this last week, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, against the powers, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Some say that God causes all trials and struggles and so forth because it is part of his plan. I want to remind you, last week that we talked about how in the Garden of Eden, God says you can have all of this other that is good, all of this, except for anything that is connected with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Stay away from that. And yet we continue to nibble away at it. Some say that God allows trials as part of his plan. And I think that in some cases that's the best way of explaining what I believe, is that God, in his infinite wisdom and his ultimate sovereignty and power, allows us to go through certain things that frankly have no loving explanation at all. And when those thoughts come into my mind, I find myself going back and nibbling again at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And I spend some time there. And I ask these questions. Why, God? Why do these things happen? Some people say that bad things happen and we won't ever know why. I happen to be somebody that kind of feels that way, that there are going to be so many things that we don't have any explanation for at all. We just see sort of this jumbled mess of existence that has Satan in it and God in it, and it's our life, and part of it is faith, and another part of it is full of trials and testing, and I just know that God says, stay away from the knowledge of the tree of the knowledge of fruit and evil, because Satan was the one that said, if you go and you eat from that, you can be like God and you can know everything that God is thinking. And I'm just one of those people that I know I need to stay away from that tree and stop nibbling it from it and let God be God. Faith for me is simply trusting that God will give me everything that I need to face all of the bad that I am ever going to face. He's going to give me comfort and strength and rest and healing and hope and peace. The trials that we go through, according to James, are the test. Where our faith is proven and measured and magnified so that it can be seen and it's gauged. Trials are the test that shows what our faith is really made of. And where we get to today in our study is that the more testing there is, the more perseverance there can be. And we'll study some more in just a few minutes. Now, James writes that the testing of our faith produces perseverance. No, why are you doing this to me, God? Why are you testing me? I think James is saying that is a waste of time. That's nibbling back on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Trials happen. Bad happens. Life happens. The unpredictable happens. The unplanned happens to all of us. We know this is true. It is our life experience. And for the woman or the man of faith, James says it is those trials and the testing that comes with them, it develops perseverance in our lives. And it's interesting because that word is translated 3 different ways in the English Bible. It is either perseverance or steadfastness or endurance. They're all the same words. They all mean the same thing. It's a combination of two words. It's a compound word meaning remain under. It's a great picture. Perseverance is the ability to remain under the struggle. Endurance is to remain under the trial, because, and honestly, this is the ultimate good news, bad news. When trials happen, when the struggle continues, we can even say when the mess gets messier, the more we pass the test, and the greater our strength to remain under the struggles, and it becomes, and we begin to experience the good again. That's how this works. It's kind of a cycle. Having the ability to remain under or endure more allows us to face the test more, and as we pass the test, we remain under even more, because the way that I look at it, that's kind of the way life is. The more we remain under the struggle, the more our faith grows, so we can grow deeper and more mature. I'm going to give you just a peek at how this passage continues. We'll look at some of this next week. It says, "Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." That's what trials can do for us. I look at the Bible and I see that Jesus went through it. We're going to go through it. The reality of life affirms every day our humanity. This passage that we read can make huge sense, and I think it can be a source of I guess if we let it, it can be a source of incredible hurt and confusion. So here's how I get through it. You spend much time in the church, there is always a lot of talk about victory and power and celebrations and 5 steps to overcoming life and 5 steps to getting here and all of this stuff. There are books and there are TV shows and conferences and radio preachers and television preachers, and all of them are telling me how I can get this right if I just do these things, because God is going to do this in my life, and so on and so forth. Here's my simplified version of this for you, and again, to the degree that you can trust me, maybe this can be helpful to you. Are you ready? I fall down. I get up and believe and trust that God will take care of me over and over and over again. And I got to tell you, I think that's as good as it gets in this life, and I love it that way. Being a Christian doesn't make all the trials and all the pain and all the suffering go away. It never does. It didn't in Jesus' life. It didn't in the disciples' life. It didn't in the lives of the Old Testament saints. This life of faith that we walk, it is a battle full of weakness and brokenness. It just is. And I want you to remember that the only soldiers in this battle are wounded ones.
Hey guys, I brought you today to a precious metals refinery because I want to show you the process that metal goes through as it's being refined. Come take a look with me. Now, the process of refining fine metal starts when gold, silver, platinum, and palladium are delivered to the refinery in several impure forms, some still connected to false teeth and other creepy stuff like that. The lots of precious metals are weighed and tabulated, then the lots are combined with flux, which looks a lot like you're actually making matters worse by pouring a bunch of dirty sand in with the metal, but it's actually a very important ingredient. This flux and the impure metal is placed in a vessel called a crucible. This is made from material that can take the heat better than the material inside it. So the crucible is then put into a melting furnace that transforms the metal and flux into a molten material, usually within 30 to 45 minutes. The crucible is then removed and the molten material is poured into a mold, sometimes shaped like a brick or other times like an inverted cone. Especially when they use a lot of flux in the cone-shaped mold, the flux fuses with the undesired matter to form a slag that is lighter than the precious metals. The slag naturally floats to the top of the mold, leaving a pure button of metal below. You can then easily separate the metal button from the slag. Once the whole lot has been melted and sampled, it's then remelted and recooled into grains about the size of BBs in order to speed up the extraction process. The grains are then placed into a mantle where an acid solution is used to dissolve the metals into a liquid form. Once the metals are fully dissolved, chemists use other substances to induce reactions that extract the exact metal they are looking for. The results are that you end up with an absolutely pure piece of gold, silver, platinum, or palladium.
I am really grateful that the Bible is full of such vivid pictures and illustrations to help us understand a little bit more about what God is like and about what we are like and our interaction with each other. And there's a picture of God that is woven through a number of different books in the Old Testament, calling God the refiner. And we have the benefit of being able to look back in history and even to look in our current times to understand a little bit about the refining process of gold and silver and other precious metals. And then as we see it, we get to see a little bit more about who we are and who God is. That is such a cool thing. The refiner, whether it's back in the Old Testament days or even now, they do essentially the same thing, just with the improvements of technology and so forth that we have today. But iron ore, stones, are proper kind of stones, are taken and they are crushed, and then the refining process is where they take those and they put them into this pot that is called, in the Bible, is where I first read about it, but it's called a crucible. And it's a melting pot where these rough stones in their original condition are put in there, and then that pot, that crucible, is put into a fire and it begins a melting process. And these pots, the crucible is able to withstand huge high temperatures. The refiner places the crucible into the furnace at these precise temperatures that are necessary for removing other metals or impurities out of the gold or the silver that's in there in its original form. And those impurities are then removed, and then as the process goes on, many times you're left with just a perfectly pure piece of gold or silver. You get the picture. Just as the furnace is used to purify silver or gold in the crucible, I think the picture that we see in the Bible is that our holy refiner, God, uses heat, the heat of trials, the heat of testing, the heat of suffering, to purify our hearts and cleanse our character. We read about it in a bunch of different ways. In Proverbs 17:3, King Solomon writes, the crucible for silver and the furnace for gold, but the Lord tests the heart. As the ore melts in the crucible under the watchful eye of the refiner, layers and layers of impurities called dross eventually form and rise to the surface in this crucible. Then the refiner will take and scrape off that layer of dross, and then the refiner will put the crucible back into the fire and let the process begin again. Proverbs 25 verse 4 says this, remove the dross from the silver, and a silversmith can produce a vessel. For us individually, there is no doubt that dross represents any misplaced dependency or misplaced loyalty. Dross represents the idols in our lives. Dross represents wrong motives and wrong attitudes and wrong actions. Anything that keeps us from being all that God wants us to be. And so in the midst of our trials and our suffering and our questions and our struggles, the fire that we go into, when we are in the crucible, when we are in the furnace, dross is brought up from inside of us. It's as if we are in the midst of some really difficult situation. We find ourselves just exploding in anger. That's dross. That's the impurities that are coming up because of the testing that we are finding ourselves in, because of the trial and the suffering that we are going through. If we use the terminology of the Bible, it's being placed in the refiner's crucible. The dross is coming to the surface and it's being scraped away by God little by little as our character is being refined, as we are turning into people that are more and more and more representative of the character of Jesus Christ. Look, this suffering is not fun. This refining process can, in and of itself, be painful. Can leave us a mess for quite a while. But for those who remember the answers to the test, remember, if you go back a couple of weeks ago, God passes out the test all the time, and he also passes out the answer sheet every time. See, the answer to the tests that we go through are exactly the same again and again and again. The answers are trust God and do what he says. This refining process, when we go through it, we come out of it because we have trusted God again. We have placed our faith in his words and done what he has commanded. That refining process produces perseverance. And what perseverance is, we get to remain in it longer, because that's the way that life is. We remain there long enough for God, the great refiner, to come in and scrape the impurities out, the dross out, and to bring us comfort and healing, and he molds us again and again into vessels that are fit for his purpose. That's what James is talking about in this passage. We're going to share communion like we do every week, so make sure that you go and you get your bread and your juice. Hope it's right there with you. We come to the refiner this morning, remembering that the suffering that Jesus endured on the cross was for our benefit. That's what we do each week when we take the juice and we take the bread. The cup and the bread They represent life and hope and comfort and peace as we remain under, as we persevere through a life that is full of trials and suffering. We remember as we drink the juice and we eat the bread that Jesus conquered death. Jesus made a way for us to endure. He made a way for us to persevere. Remember that as you enter into your time of communion with the rest of the people of faith this morning.
The splendor of the King, clothed in majesty, let all the earth rejoice, all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide, and trembles at his voice, trembles at his voice. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And oh, we'll see how great is our God. Age to age he stands, and time is in his hands, beginning and the end, beginning and the end. The Godhead, three in one, Father, Spirit, Son, the Lion and the Lamb, the Lion and the Lamb. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And oh, we'll see how great is our God. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And oh, we'll see how great is our God. How great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God. And oh, we'll see how great is our God. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And oh, we'll see how great is our God.
It has been great to have you with us this morning, as it is every week. I hope I'll be able to see many of you in the weeks to come as more and more people begin to join us for our live services. But if not, I am perfectly content to meet you right here in this place week after week until you are ready or until things change. Uh, I hope that the words today have been good for you. I hope you are able to see more clearly that God and His refining fire is busy in your life, in my life, helping us become more and more conformed to the image of His Son, to live out our life. I promise you, if your life is anything like mine is, you are going to endure again more trials and more difficulties somewhere along your path. I hope it's not this week. I hope this is a great week for you. But let God's words, let God's comfort, let God's peace kind of just grab a hold of you as you live out your life following His Son this week. I hope that you are going to join us tonight for our virtual prayer service for the start of school. I think it's going to be a really good time. Hope you join us there, and hope that I see you soon. Bye.
I will sing to the Lord. Yeah, I will sing to the Lord. He is high above and lifted up. He is high above and lifted up. I will sing to the Lord. Yeah, I will sing to the Lord. He was there for me in the desert. He was there for me on the mountain top. He was there for me when there was no water. He was there for me, and He gave me a drink. I will sing to the Lord. Yeah, I will sing to the Lord. He is high above and lifted up. Oh, He is high above and lifted up. Yes, He is high above and lifted up. Oh, He is high above and lifted up. I will sing to the Lord. Yeah, I will sing to the Lord. He is high above and lifted up. He is high above and lifted up. I will sing to the Lord. Yeah, I will sing to the Lord. He was there for me in the desert. He was there for me on the mountain top. He was there for me when there was no water. He was there for me, and He gave me a drink. I will sing to the Lord. Yeah, I will sing to the Lord. He is high above and lifted up. Oh, He is high above and lifted up. Yes, He is high above and lifted up. For He is high above and lifted up. In the desert, He was there. On the mountain, He was there. In the valley deep, He was there. Everywhere I look, I know my God is there, and I will sing to the Lord. Yeah, I will sing to the Lord. He is high above, lifted up. Oh, He is high above, lifted up. Yes, He is high above, lifted up. For He is high above, lifted up. In the desert, He was there. On Yes, you will sing to the Lord. Yes, and I will sing to the Lord.